Hey everyone, welcome back to the Speaking Room. I'm James, and before we get into today's topic, Emma, I feel like this is one of those conversations people don't realize they need until someone finally talks about it out loud. Because the difference between how you speak English at work and how you speak with friends can be confusing, even for people who already feel okay with English.
Yeah, I agree. And what's interesting is that learners usually notice this difference before they understand it. They'll say things like, I can talk easily with friends, but at work I feel stiff. Or I sound confident in meetings, but awkward socially. That tells me it's not about level, it's about context.
Exactly. Context is doing most of the work here. At work, English carries weight. Your words feel tied to your job, your reputation, how people see you. So naturally, you slow down, you choose safer expressions, and sometimes you end up sounding more formal than you actually want to.
And that formality isn't fake, it's protective. You're protecting yourself from being misunderstood, from sounding rude, or from saying something that could come back to you later. That's a lot of mental effort happening behind the scenes.
Which explains why people feel tired after speaking English at work all day, even if they didn't talk that much. Their brain was constantly filtering, adjusting, checking tone. With friends, that filter is mostly gone.
Yeah, with friends, you're not editing every sentence. You're reacting, you're joking, you're sometimes unclear, and it doesn't matter. That freedom changes the way your English sounds.
And here's where learners get stuck. They think, my English with friends sounds more natural, so my work English must be bad. But that's not true at all. They're just two different styles serving two different purposes.
Right. One is about clarity and respect. The other is about connection and ease. Neither one is superior. They just belong in different spaces.
Let's talk about tone for a second, because this word comes up a lot, and people don't always know what it means. When we say tone, we're talking about the feeling your words carry. Polite, relaxed, serious, casual, not the dictionary meaning of the words themselves.
And tone is often more important than grammar. You can make a small grammar mistake at work and be fine. But if your tone sounds too blunt or too casual, that's when problems start.
For example, saying, I don't like this idea, isn't grammatically wrong, but at work it can sound harsh. So people soften it and say something like, I'm not sure this approach will work.
Same meaning, different tone. And learners need time to feel that difference, not just memorize it.
With friends, though, you wouldn't say that. You'd probably say exactly what you think, maybe even exaggerate. That exaggeration is part of friendly speech.
Yeah, friends expect personality, they expect emotion. At work, people expect stability and professionalism.
And here's something important. Professionalism doesn't mean complicated English. It usually means clear, calm, and respectful English.
That's a big relief for learners once they realize it. You don't need fancy vocabulary at work. You need reliable language.
Reliable is a good word here. It means people can trust what you're saying and how you're saying it.
And trust builds when your language matches the situation. That's why mixing styles can feel uncomfortable.
Like when someone talks to coworkers the same way they talk to close friends. It's not wrong morally, but it can feel off.
Or the opposite. When someone speaks to friends like they're writing a formal email, that creates distance, even if everything is correct.
Distance is a great word. Language can create closeness or distance without us realizing it.
And learners are often blamed for sounding cold or too quiet, when actually they're just being careful.
Which is why awareness matters more than rules here. Once you notice how your English changes across situations, you gain control.
Control doesn't mean forcing yourself to sound different. It means choosing.
Choosing how direct to be, how relaxed, how expressive.
And that choice comes from exposure, listening to real conversations at work and real conversations between friends.
That's also why textbook English can feel strange. It often lives somewhere in the middle, not truly work English, not truly friend English.
Exactly. It's useful but incomplete. Real life fills in the gaps.
Let's make this practical. Think about how you ask for something at work. You probably give context first.
You might say, when you have time, could you take a look at this? That extra phrase, when you have time, is doing social work.
With friends, you don't need that cushioning. You might just say, "Can you check this for me?"
And no one feels offended because the relationship is already secure.
That's another key difference. Security. Friendships have emotional safety built in.
Work relationships are more fragile, especially at first, so language becomes a tool to protect that space.
And learners shouldn't feel bad about being cautious. Caution is normal.
What causes problems is when people think cautious English means bad English.
It doesn't. It just means you're aware of your environment.
And awareness is a sign of growth, not weakness.
So if you're listening and thinking, my English personality changes depending on where I am, that's actually a good sign.
It means you're adapting, even if it feels uncomfortable right now.
And adaptation is something fluent speakers do naturally over years.
You're just doing it consciously, which makes it feel heavier.
But that heaviness fades with time and experience.
And as it fades, your English starts to feel more flexible, not rigid.
That flexibility is what we're slowly building through these conversations.
Not perfect English, usable English.
English that fits your life.
One thing I think we should talk about next is switching, because a lot of learners understand, at least intellectually, that work English and friend English are different, but the hard part is knowing how to move between them without feeling fake or lost. That switch doesn't always feel natural at first, especially if you're tired or stressed.
Yeah, and the switch isn't just about words. It's about rhythm, pace, and even how much you explain yourself. At work, you tend to give more context. You explain why you're saying something. With friends, you often skip the background completely and jump straight into the point.
Exactly. And learners sometimes think that skipping context means being rude, but that's not always true. It depends on the relationship. With friends, context is already shared. At work, context often needs to be created.
That's such an important distinction. Shared context means you don't need to be careful in the same way. You don't need to soften every sentence because the relationship itself does that work for you.
Which is why switching styles can feel uncomfortable when you don't know what level of closeness you're allowed to use yet, especially in a new job.
Yeah, early on at work, most people play it safe. They listen more than they speak. They choose neutral language. That's not weakness. That's strategy.
And strategy is something learners underestimate. They think fluent speakers are just confident all the time, but confidence usually comes after you understand the environment.
Right. Fluency isn't bravery. It's familiarity.
That's a good way to put it. And familiarity takes time, which is why your English might sound different after 6 months at a job compared to your first week.
You slowly learn what's acceptable, how direct people are, how much humor they use, whether sarcasm exists in that space or not.
And sarcasm is a whole topic on its own, especially in English-speaking workplaces.
Yeah, because sarcasm can be friendly or dangerous depending on timing and relationship. Learners often sense it, but don't feel confident using it.
Which is completely fine. You don't need sarcasm to be fluent. Sometimes avoiding it is actually smarter.
That's another thing. Sounding natural doesn't mean copying everything native speakers do. It means choosing what fits you.
Exactly. Some native speakers are very casual at work. Others are very formal. There isn't one model.
But learners often search for one correct version, and that search creates stress.
Stress that shows up in their voice, their pauses, their body language.
And that's why their friend English often sounds better. They're relaxed. They're not monitoring themselves.
So a useful exercise is noticing what you drop when you're relaxed. Is it extra politeness, long explanations, apologies?
Apologies are a big one. At work, people apologize a lot in English. Sorry to bother you, sorry for the delay, sorry if this is a silly question.
And while that can be polite, overusing it can make you sound unsure of yourself.
With friends, you rarely apologize for existing.
Exactly. You just talk.
So part of switching styles is learning when an apology is useful and when it's just habit.
Another difference is how you disagree. At work, disagreement is usually indirect. You hear phrases like, "I see your point, but," or "I'm not completely convinced."
With friends, disagreement is often shorter and more emotional. Nah, I don't agree. Or, that's not it.
And both are valid, they just live in different spaces. What learners struggle with is using indirect language without sounding unclear.
Which is where tone and pacing matter. You don't need many words, you just need calm delivery.
Calm delivery means slower speech, fewer fillers, and steady volume. And fillers like are interesting because they're everywhere with friends.
But at work, people tend to reduce them even if they don't eliminate them completely.
Learners sometimes think fillers are bad, but they're actually human. The key is balance.
Exactly. Too many fillers at work can sound unsure. Too few with friends can sound stiff.
And again, this isn't something you memorize. You feel it over time.
That's why we keep saying exposure matters. Watching how people speak in meetings, listening to how coworkers chat during breaks.
Those in-between moments are gold. They show you how people transition between styles.
Yeah, like the moment a meeting ends and suddenly everyone's tone changes.
The language relaxes immediately. And learners who notice that shift learn faster than those who focus only on formal situations.
Because they start understanding English as a living system, not a fixed set of rules.
Another thing worth mentioning is humor. Humor exists at work, but it's usually lighter.
Safer, less personal, less risky.
With friends, humor can be exaggerated, sarcastic, or even dark.
And learners don't need to force humor at work to sound natural.
Sometimes being clear and pleasant is more than enough.
That's something people forget. You don't need to entertain anyone.
You just need to communicate effectively.
And effective communication looks different depending on who's listening.
Which brings us back to the main idea, flexibility.
Flexibility without losing yourself.
You're not becoming a different person at work, you're just adjusting your language.
And that adjustment becomes lighter with practice.
So if switching feels heavy right now, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
It means you're still learning the environment.
And learning always comes before comfort.
But comfort does come, slowly, quietly.
And one day you realize you're switching styles without thinking about it.
That's when English starts working for you instead of against you.
And that's where we want to take people with this conversation.
Before we wrap this up, I think it's worth saying one last thing. If you ever feel like your English personality changes depending on where you are, work, friends, family, that doesn't mean you're fake. It means you're aware. And awareness is actually a skill, not a weakness.
Yeah, and honestly, everyone does this. Native speakers do it without thinking, so when learners notice it consciously, it can feel heavier than it really is. But that awareness is what helps you adjust, grow, and sound more natural over time.
Exactly. English isn't about choosing one version of yourself and locking it in forever. It's about knowing when to be clear, when to be relaxed, and when to just be quiet and listen.
And if this conversation made you feel a little more normal about switching styles, or a little less stressed about how you sound, then we're doing our job.
That's the goal here. We're not trying to teach perfect English. We're trying to make English feel usable, something you can actually live in.
So, if you're enjoying these conversations, if they help you think differently about how English works in real life,
Make sure you subscribe to the channel, not just for grammar or vocabulary, but for these honest talks about how English actually feels.
drop a comment too. Tell us where English feels hardest for you. Work, friends, meetings, dating, whatever. We read them, and they really shape what we talk about next.
And if you know someone who's stuck between professional English and real-life English, send this episode to them. It might save them a lot of overthinking.
Thanks for spending this time with us. Seriously.
We'll catch you in the next one.